Hi everyone, Internet Vicious Book Reader here. Today I want to talk about Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reads. I started reading Taylor Jenkins books like many others during the pandemic in 2020, starting with her best book so far, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I have continued reading her books ever since. With her characters, she built this world and timeline where the characters in each book have met one another in a way that makes the world where her character lives feel more fleshed out. My favorite of her book so far is Malibu Rising, but that's mostly because I can relate in some shape or form with the main character there that is trying to raise her family, replacing their missing parents. Not all of her books have that same level of writing, unfortunately. While Daisy Jones and the Sick is this very well done experimental storytelling where the story is told through a series of interviews that the characters in the book have, but her last book, Carrie Soto is Back, feels very underwhelming despite having a character that has made appearance in other books and became the main character here. The author was silent for a while after that, and to my surprise, she is now back with another book, this book, Atmosphere, which in a turn of surprise start off with a historical sci-fi at NASA. It's a space novel. Nowadays, every astronaut from NASA are usually the peak of human achievement since they need to be able to fix the ISS where they live, so they need to be able to basically build them down there. So they knew how to also build them up there in case of emergency in microgravity. Since mass muscle are reduced at an alarming rate in microgravity, they need to be fit enough to at least still be able to maintain muscle for a prolonged period of living in space. And since they live a prolonged period of life there in such a cramped space where any mistake can and will kill them, they need to be able to socialize in some shape or form. In space, you cannot be a social weirdo that says stupid stuff just cause you can. For example, you can be like Alan Dunes who liked James Bond too much that he cannot separate reality from fiction and started doing illegal immoral stuff because he sees himself as a super spy. Yeah, too much main character syndrome. If you live in a single room together with everyone else, having someone like Alan Dunes would be hell since you don't know what kind of dangerous shit he'll do to get some attention. So most of modern astronaut is not only smart but also fit enough physically and mentally. It's not perfect of course since they're still human, but intrusive talk usually don't win up there. But imperfect as they might be, the current NASA is still much better compared to the past since they're still testing most of this stuff. The story of the book itself starts in 1984 where they are still testing a lot of this stuff. A group of astronauts was sent to build and launch the R6 satellite by attaching it to the spaceship Navigator, a spaceship that was built to be reusable. But when they reached space, the team made two mistakes. One is to use explosives to detach the final code from Navigator and R6, and two, the two astronauts that they sent for the spacewalk, John Griffin and Vanessa Ford, decided to disobey protocol by not closing their airlock hatch to witness the explosion from the open door. The metal band connecting the satellite exploded, and because they're in the vacuum of space, there's none of the usual effect explosions have on Earth, it's just debris flying at speed unrestricted by air. One of the debris hit Griff, causing a hole at his spacesuit and his body, and there was a second debris causing the navigator to leak. Air leak. The cabin pressure inside the ship quickly dropped, and soon the other three members inside the ship died, followed by Griff. Vanessa is the only one left because she was still in her spacesuit at that time. But at least for Vanessa, in NASA there is Houston. There is the control room, and Vanessa is not alone in space because Joan and the other astronauts are there with her from the control room. We go back to the past to have the story from Joan's position right now, to tell how she became part of the team. It is giving a bit of pop feminism, feminism that comes from around the fourth wave that was co-opted by companies for them to make money. In comparison, the current feminism now is at the stage of uplifting everyone else with organizations like Code Pink or individuals like Angela Davis or Greta Thunberg. But it's not as bad as Disney's feminism that fully co-opt the movement without actually uplifting women's or LGBT voice. There is still something here. From 7 years ago, Joan has always been a caretaker. When her irresponsible sister got pregnant in college, she's the one who took care of her, and when her niece Frances was born, she is also the one who took care of her. She also likes space even before it got more popular after the moon landing, so when her sister made her aware that NASA is now also recruiting women, she made the jump to apply to them. And she made it. She got accepted into this training camp and had to be trained both on the technical aspect of her specialty and also the other training they got like physical and also piloting aircraft. It is here in this camp where she met and became friends with Vanessa. In this camp, some of them also have to compete with each other to fill in the empty spots that have the same designated specialty. But that didn't stop them to form group of friendship with each other. Some of them even started fucking already because apparently this is grey anatomy. But as absurd as it is, it does function to show that Joan is at that moment in her life asexual and aromantic. But unfortunately, Joan is the main character, so she cannot be as an arrow that is mostly just relegated to side characters. So of course it turns out that Joan just hasn't met the right person yet. Also, because to be an astronaut in NASA, you need to have military pilot license, the book of course had some characters talk about some America's military affair, and Korean War and Vietnam War were mentioned without being called out at all as foreign military invasion by America, which stand out so much if you know history, and also because the book also called out a lot of misogyny, so not calling out war crime at the same time is very jarring. The Korean War I can slightly overlook since you do need to read much more history about American imperialism and Korean first president Syngman Rhee and the atrocities that they committed and the brutal fight of the people at South Korea to exile him back to Hawaii. People usually need to know at least some of those to get past the perfect victim narrative to realize the war crime aspect of America's involvement in the Korean War. But the Vietnam War is so much more clear-cut. America's involvement since the French colonization, how they split the country in half after that, then the following Vietnam War against American invasion, where America even made a new slur just for the Vietnamese to try to trick the American that they are the good guys in the military invasion, and how it only managed to fool the American for a small period of time because how much atrocity they committed there. So having it displayed as just another war is so jarring in the story. The book also tried to combine human drama and science fiction, and as a result, one-third of the story suffers. Science fiction needs a lot of dialogues full of technicalities for world building, while human drama needs a lot of very well-written dialogue to flesh out the characters and their chemistry in the story. I actually had to force myself to keep reading the book, and that has never happened with the other books that I've read post Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. One-third of the book is not just slow burn, it's a slog to go through. But with that said, even with my criticism of how some of the story was handled, the story does get better after the very slow and long start. After Joan finally go through her struggle of finding her preferences, she and Vanessa started dating in secret. Since this is in the 80s, it's peak Hays Code era where LGBT was only allowed to be in movies in a negative light, as sinful villainous character, even in globally successful movies for kids. That policy contributed a lot to people's view on LGBT globally, but of course in today's era, most people who do pinkwashing forget that the propaganda started from the Hays Code. And of course in the story, this portrayal affected how Joan and Vanessa go through their relationship. They had to hide their relationship from their friends and families, they go on dates separately, they also don't talk about their relationship to anyone, they share it only in private, like having another identity that they need to hide from public eyes and to people they knew. Vanessa might have normalized that since she has more experience with it, but Joan is new at this and is more unwilling to hide it since she wants to share it with the people she loves. They went through a lot during their relation, shown in a montage to catch up with the early slow start of the story. And during their relationship, Joan even had to adapt her niece at one point of the story to get her away from her awful and self-centered sister who lived only for her own sake, and with her niece living with her and Vanessa's busy schedule, it got harder for the relationship to exist, but nevertheless, they had a great although hidden relationship, and they eventually passed the test to be astronauts. But these are two attractive and accomplished women, so they were of course placed in an even more scrutiny than normal, so eventually one of the members who is more of an antisocial reported them to NASA, and America is unfortunately a liberal country whose morality is only in hindsight, so their boss at NASA told Joan directly to end her sexual deviancy relationship. So Joan was forced to break up with Vanessa before she went on her mission to space. Vanessa told her that she refused to keep up with her and went on the mission at the start of the book. And that's basically how the book goes. It is a good human drama, it is an okay science fiction, and it is also another genre, it's a historical fiction, but the historical fiction aspect of it is unfortunately the biggest of them all. The best of historical fiction like Martyr and in some ways also James confronted the past in a much more interesting way. It forces the reader to look at the past like a mirror that self-reflected who they are. But this book that is inspired by the Six is not really doing that, which is such a missed opportunity. Overall, I give this book a 3. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.